First one, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, is psychodynamic psychoanalytic theory by Sigmund Freud. Um, Freud was instrumental in getting some of his theories out there and getting help for those with mental illness and neuroses in particular. So his focus was on concepts of intrapsychic conflict among the structure of the mind. Initially, he designed it to explain neuroses and conditions of high anxiety, such as phobias and hysteria. His theory later expanded to include normal and abnormal development and personality development. Basic tenets of psychodynamic theory are that it assumes that all behavior is purposeful and meaningful, and therefore all behavior has meaning. And some of the principles of psychic determinism, even apparently meaningless, random, or accidental behavior is actually motivated by underlying unconscious mental content. For example, someone forgets where they park their car because they didn't really want to go wherever it was that they were headed. Um, it assumes that also most mental activity is unconscious and urges, feelings, and fantasies that would be unacceptable to the person's values is consciously experienced. Also, that conscious behavior and choices are affected by unconscious mental content. And also takes into account that childhood experiences shape adult personality. Instincts, urges, or fantasies function as drives that motivate thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Two types of normal drives, there's the sexual drives, libido, and aggressive drives. Drives affect behavior as an individual attempts to deal with the associated feelings and seeks gratification through release of the tension that the drives produce. Normally, different actions or behaviors are used at different ages to discharge tension from drives and seek gratification. On this chart here, you see the psychosexual stages of development. Um, and they've been identified to show the age-related behaviors commonly used for discharging drives and obtaining gratification, according to Freud. This is all, again, Freud's theories. Looking then here, I'm sure you've all heard about the id, the ego, and the superego. So there are three, according to Freud, three primary psychic structures make up the mind and personality and are responsible for mental functioning. The id, again, according to Freud, contains primary drives or instincts, urges such as hunger, sex, or aggression, or fantasies. Drives are largely unconscious, sexual or aggressive in content, and infantile in nature. Operates on the pleasure principle, seeking immediate gratification. And so the id is present at birth and motivates early infantile actions. And the id says, I want. The ego contains the concepts of external reality. The rational mind, responsible for logical and abstract thinking, functions in adaptation. It mediates between the demands and drives of environmental realities, operates on the reality principle, and it begins to develop at birth as infants struggle to deal with their environment, and responsible for use of defense mechanisms, which we'll talk about here shortly. And the ego says, I think, I evaluate. And then we look at the superego. It's the ego ideal, contains sense of conscious, of right versus wrong, also contains aspirations, ideals, and moral values, regulated by guilt and shame, and it begins to fully develop around age 6 as a child comes into contact with external authority figures such as parents, school teachers, coaches, or religious figures. The superego says, I should, I ought. And again, let me just emphasize these are all according to Freud. And as we look at this diagram here, the part of the iceberg above the water corresponds to the conscious part of the mind. On the other hand, everything beneath the surface is unconscious. The ego is above the water, The id is beneath. The superego is a bit above and a bit below, partially conscious and partially unconscious. Each part has its own nature and role within the mind, and the conflicting interests of these three are the driving forces of all human conflicts, again, according to Freud. So, again, you'll want to study these, learn these, you will see these again. I want to talk about the defense mechanisms. They're most notably used by, again, Sigmund Freud in his psychoanalytic theory. A defense mechanism is actually a tactic developed by the ego to protect against anxiety. Defense mechanisms are thought to safeguard the mind against feelings and thoughts that are too difficult for the conscious mind to cope with. In some instances, defense mechanisms are thought to keep inappropriate or unwanted thoughts and impulses from entering the conscious mind. Denial is probably one of the best known defense mechanisms, used often to describe situations in which people seem unable to face reality or admit an obvious truth. We've all heard the saying, he or she is in denial. Denial is a refusal then to recognize that something has occurred or is occurring currently. An example would be drug addicts or alcoholics often deny they have a problem. And according to Freud, denial functions to protect the ego from things that the individual doesn't feel that they can cope with. So you've heard of repression as well. That's when for instance, if someone's experienced abuse when they were younger, the unconscious exclusion of unwanted, disturbing emotions or thoughts or impulses from the conscious mind. So the mind will try to protect uh, itself from this experience. We also have suppression, and that's conscious. It's a conscious analog of repression and conscious denial of a disturbing situation, feeling, or event. So I want you to again look over these. You should know these. You expect to see these again. Developmental theories. Erik Erikson's best known, his stages of human development. So growth chains and development are part of the dynamic, constant life processes of being human. And humans develop uniquely from simple to complex. The health states of individuals and families can be viewed over a continuum of development. And developmental stages and the milestones or tasks that accompany them give insight into age appropriate behaviors, measure levels of comprehension for client teaching, and provide a context within which to evaluate assessment data. I've always liked Erickson's and his theory of development, his stages of human development. Again, you want to know these, commit them to memory. You will see these again in this class and other classes and on your boards. But I also think as you're working with clients, they are important, and I do think they are fairly accurate in many respects. So you have, for instance, your school-age child who's 6 to 12, industry versus inferiority, their ability to work, sense of competency and achievement. And if they fail that, they have a sense of inferiority, difficulty with working, difficulty learning. I've seen these in other clients and patients that I've cared for. If they don't seem to do well in this stage, or if they failed in this stage, it seems to go with them through later portions of their life and development. And sometimes if you get a good therapist or they get good counseling, they can go back and redo that stage and hopefully make some improvements in their life. Cognitive theory by Jean Piaget. Piaget believed that human development evolves through cognition, learning, and comprehending. He believed that factors such as a native endowment and biological environmental factors set the course for a child's development. And he described four stages of cognitive development, and you'll see those here. Again, you have the first one was sensorimotor, which is birth to 2 years, and that's a critical achievement of this. Of the critical achievement of this stage is object permanence, and the ability to understand that objects have an existence independent of the child's involvement with them. So children don't first understand that, and then they grow into that. And then stage two is pre-operational. It's from ages 2 to 7 years. More extensive use of language and symbolism, magical thinking. And then three, you have concrete operations. That's 7 to 12. Child begins to use logic, develops concepts of reversibility and conservation. And reversibility is the realization that one thing can turn into another and back again, such as water to ice and then ice to water. And conservation is the ability to recognize that although the shape of an object may change, it will still maintain characteristics that enable it to be recognized as the object, such as clay. And formal operations, like we shared, is the ability to think abstractly. Thinking operates in a formal, logical manner. And we have here Maslow's hierarchy of needs. No, you've all learned this in nursing school. It's a health model rather than an illness model, and I've always liked this one as well. It's hierarchical, organized in a manner of needs, and it hypothesizes that certain needs are important and some are more important than others. And it states that a person will attempt to meet more important needs first before satisfying others, such as, you know, survival. You have to have water, air, food, sleep. So those are your um, kind of your uh, physiological needs. And then you have your safety, protection from harm, and emotional and physical love and well-being comes next, and then self-esteem, sense of worth, and then self-actualization and being able to achieve one's potential and being all that one can be. And then finally, I know you guys have seen this, I'm sure, in nursing school. Again, a very important model. You will see this again. You will see this throughout the program. You'll see this on boards. And also, you'll see this when you're working with your patients. I think this is a great model. The Trans-Theoretical Model of Change by Prochaska, Norcross, and DiClemente. It states that change, such as in health behaviors, occurs in six predictable stages. So we have pre-contemplation. The person has no intention to change. And then there's contemplation. The person is thinking about changing, is unaware that there is a problem, but committed to changing. Preparation, the person has made the decision to change and is ready for action. And then action is the person is engaging in specific overt actions to change. And maintenance, the person is engaging in behaviors to prevent relapse. Some models will have relapse in here. I didn't include that in that one, in this here for us this time, but just be aware of that there is relapse um, that can happen as well. So that covers briefly some of the psychological theories that are out there. There are more, and you'll be learning about those as we go along. But I thought it was important to touch on these. They're in your book, the SATIC book. You'll see those in there, and you'll be seeing these again. Thank you.